As I am hoping most of you understand, this is the Maine Outdoor Adventure Club. I'm Dan Kidd. I'm the president of the thing right now. And remind you, you're going to have to do this election thing too. Let's make it a little note. Okay, we have whoops, I bumped it. Wait a minute. Oh,
Fine.
there we go. All right, see? Don't put your paper down and write on top of the computer. That's the first lesson I learned just now. Okay. All right. Let's do a little bit of MOAC business. Well, first of all, I want to welcome new members. I see we have a number of them here. I know Zooming is not everybody's idea, the greatest thing in the world to do, but that's what we got right now, and it looks like it's going to be for the foreseeable future. Okay, I would like to know, we have a new website coming up, and is there someone here, maybe is Wendy on? I don't see Wendy right now. Maybe Bill, you could update us on where we stand with the new website coming up?
Well, it's all I know is that it's still being worked on. So I don't know when we're gonna actually see it. I think last I heard was hopefully sometime after the holidays.
And so we're going to jump right in today. I'm going to ask Patricia to throw that link into that one more time. So our discussion today, we're going to use our main.
Okay.
What
Someone's
was that?
not muted.
Is that Amy?
Was that us or what?
I think there's someone on here. It's they're doing another Zoom meeting also. Maybe they're doing Zoom yoga. That's why they have their picture off.
Okay, you know, this isn't a high-class professional deal. We're starting to get the feeling like that, okay? So, Bill, you say it's nothing yet. It's
hopefully soon. But
right.
I heard from Wendy today that all she knows so far that's in the works. She hasn't contacted Debbie recently to find out exactly estimated delivery date. So,
All
all I know
right.
is hopefully soon.
What we're trying to do is simplify it and take the glitches out and make it a little better. Okay.
Yeah, there's been a couple of articles in the last two newsletters about it with some sort of screenshots of mock-ups, but hopefully overall it will be better, and hopefully it'll be a whole lot easier to post activities and stuff.
Well, I do hope so. Okay, we have some photos of trips.
I'm here.
Where are you? There you are.
Oh,
Ann Hitzrow is the person in charge of photos from the last month or whatever, MOAC related things. And Ann, would you put them on there, and everybody
Sure.
Feel free to chime in if you see your picture.
I will share my screen and get to my photos. Do you see them now? Do you see the photos?
Yep.
Yes.
Good.
Mount Cutler.
This was Bill's trip, Bill Briggs, early with no snow.
And only one patch of ice.
Oh, okay.
That's changing.
And this, Eileen Why Not led a little holiday light stroll through downtown Portland. Had a nice group.
Yeah.
Nancy, thank you for the photos.
And I think Paul Louis led one the next night also.
Oh, okay. And then the grand holiday party. Looks like it was fun. Dan, you were there. How was it?
Fun, but I couldn't walk afterwards. It hurt to dance so much.
Where was it?
Where was it?
Yeah.
MVets Hall, the same place we've had it in the last bunch of years.
Where are you guys based out of, though?
Portland.
Portland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so is the
I'm sorry, yeah.
Falmouth, right?
It's in Falmouth or Yarmouth? It might be
Yarmouth.
Yarmouth.
Yeah, but I was going to say it looks like Yarmouth. Betsy and I grew up in Yarmouth, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, raised our family there.
Oh, nice one. of Peter, Tammy, and Nancy. The dancing crew.
6 foot distance.
Oh,
Lots of dancing.
Now, let me say, this is Bill Schaus, and he wrote the MOAC song, and it's on the, you can listen to it. It's on the website.
What a
Very
handsome
nice.
guy. What a handsome guy.
Doesn't he look good? Yes.
Cleans up good.
Yeah.
and this was another Bill Briggs hike up Pleasant Mountain.
It was a beautiful snowy day. Nice view.
Nice view.
Look through the fog, you can see the white mountains in the background.
And then this was a hike that Ann Geisler led last weekend, I guess, up Tuckerman's.
Did you guys ski when you got up there, or was it just a hike?
I don't,
Yeah, I think we just hiked.
I think
Oh.
they just hiked. Oh, there's not much snow up there.
Yeah.
I've skied down that. Geez, I won't do that again.
Still pretty rocky. And that's it for this month.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ann. By the way, people, if you have photos and you want to show them at the meeting, just send them to photos@moac.org. Did I say that right?
That's perfect.
Okay, all right. She'll put them on. We have a lot more. I'm trying to get on the new website something where we can put on the pictures you had from the recent pictures, like you did this last weekend. Put it on, so it's more spontaneous.
Okay, great.
Okay, all right. Now, what about trips coming up? Do we have anybody like to mention something about trips coming up that they, I have one right now, and let me just start with that. I'm gonna do the Rio Grande, God willing. And it's gonna be January 15th to the 30th. That's 121 miles through canyons. And we can get canoes and everything. You don't need equipment, and we can hook you up with partners and so on. And we actually have a couple openings now. As of like about an hour ago, some issues came up, and then we're changing the numbers again. So if you're thinking you might want to go, I'd love to have you, maybe, and give me a call. We'll talk about it. Anybody else have a trip they'd like to bring up, or another anything really?
Well, this is Bill. I don't have anything planned, but this Sunday's my last day for my seasonal job at El Bean, so I'll have more free time. So hopefully I'll be leading some more hikes starting next week, weather permitting.
Okay. What about trips there? Boy, Tom, you look like you're gonna fall asleep there. Why don't you do a trip in Florida, Tom? Oh, you can't hear him. He's muted there. All right. All right,
Dan,
listen.
I'm going back to my dorm room this weekend where I took some of the best trips of my life.
Okay. All right. Moving along. Anybody else got a trip out there we'd like to bring up? Looks like you're in traction there, Oh, geez. Okay.
Hey, Dan,
Yep,
this is
sure.
Nancy Dorrance.
Yes, Nancy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
A few to come to Saddleback actually in early March. So maybe we'll put some of those dates on the calendar, but I love Saddleback.
Now we're talking.
Feel about it.
Wait,
Yeah,
we only got
so
half of what you
bring it
said,
on.
Nancy.
All I
Oh,
heard was
Dan?
she's coming to
Well, I'm
Saddleback.
in the car.
We're in the
Dan?
car. Yeah.
Dan, I'm actually in Maine. And if the weather's good for flying the next 4 days, I'll go up. I'll send a notice out.
Okay. He's got balloons. This is with a balloon, I assume.
Yes, this is with a balloon this time.
No, you're scaring me there, Tom. You look like you're in traction, lying flat in the bed or something.
I am lying flat in the bed. I'm really lazy. I've been at airports all day.
Okay. I think we ought to have some trips up to Saddleback.
I
That
love where
sounds
your
good,
head's at
Nancy.
on that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure we're gonna too. I mean, there's no question. I can't wait to get back up there. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to mention on that, on trips? Okay, one thing I did want to mention, we've got a Winterfest coming up. That's going to be outside. It looks like it's going to be at the Orchard Ridge Farm, at Mary Walker's farm in Gorham. I just stopped by there the other day and it looks great. That's not a sure thing, and I don't think we have a date. Do we have a date on that, Bill?
Yeah, let me look it up. We
March
posted it.
6th.
Oh, you can just say any date. That's all right.
No,
March
didn't we
6th.
do it, save the date? Didn't we do that?
Yeah,
I
we
think
did.
we did.
Just
Was it March 6th?
that sounds right. Yeah, that's a Saturday.
Okay, all right. So it's looking like that's likely gonna be the place. Okay, just something to think about up front. Okay. All right, do we have any other meeting business that anybody'd like to bring up?
March 6th is a Sunday, so it would be March 5th.
Okay. Is-
Oh, is that the Ides of March?
Well,
No,
15th.
Oh, good. All right, good. Okay. Oh, elections. If somebody wants to run for the board, or, and that includes president, vice president, at large, treasurer, embezzler, whole thing, anything. Let me know, or we have I think we need an elections officer, come to think of it. Did we get one yet? We need an
No,
elections.
we
No.
haven't. So
we haven't
All
heard
right.
back from Hans yet.
Hans, I think he's on here right now. I saw his
He
name
is,
somewhere.
he is.
All right, let's all vote him in right now. Everybody in
Yeah.
favor of having him? All right, you're in there, Hans. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, why don't we just go right into the main speaker, which is Andy Shepard. And Andy is the fellow, looks like has pulled a rabbit out of a hat and saved Saddleback. I think we owe a lot to him. Andy, go ahead here, please.
Well,
Tell us
thanks.
what's going
I
on.
would be very uncomfortable with any notion that I saved Saddleback. I get far too much credit for what's happening here, but my understanding is that I have 2 hours to tell my story. So I'll start with, it was a cold and rainy day in June 20th, 1957, Anchorage, Alaska. The headline in the paper was that a moose crashed through the local police department, or I can just fast forward to the part about Saddleback.
I like the moose, actually. But
The limit's 45.
Okay, all right. Well, I can play the tune in less time than that. I'll talk for a little bit and then open it up to questions for you guys. But the essence of my background is that I am an adventurer. I've lived a lot of my life in mountains and remote places. My dad was the head of the Dartmouth Outing Club and brought all of his kids up to have a fascination and appreciation for the outdoors. So I started working for Ella Bean. I was an executive there for a number of years. Bill, glad to hear that you're towing the pines at the old company there. And while I was there, I spent an awful lot of time. Well, basically my job was going in and taking over businesses at Beans that were struggling and turning them around. And in the process of doing that, I had responsibility for sourcing a lot of products in factories in mill towns around Maine. And this was the late 80s, early 1990s. And a lot of those mills were going out of business. And they were the victim of kind of the end of the second iteration of the Industrial Revolution. A lot of those factories jobs were being transported overseas, and I and my team spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we might create an opportunity for those mills to recover. So we started reaching out to them, finding out what kind of products they could manufacture, and trying to put those things into our store and into our catalog. And that's kind of turning the merchandising notion on its head. Usually you try to identify the emerging interests of your customers and then source products to meet those interests. In this case, we were doing the opposite. We were figuring out what our manufacturers could make and trying to encourage our customers to buy those things. And I'm incredibly proud of the team that I had at Beans for their willingness to dive into that kind of endeavor, but it had the predictable results, which was that we couldn't overcome the forces of international trade. And a lot of those businesses and communities, Rumford, Waterville, Skowhegan, a lot of those places that we got a lot of product from, we couldn't get products from anymore. I started thinking about what an economic model in those rural communities might look like after the manufacturing industry had moved on. And I came up with the idea for this program called Maine Winter Sports Center. And some of you may be aware of that. We built some of the top Nordic venues in the world up in Fort Kent and Presque Isle. We hosted World Cup biathlon events, world championships. We had a World Cup in Fort Kent that had 140 million TV viewers, and the Super Bowl, for instance, has 109 million. So, we had the desired effect in those communities through the Nordic efforts. Those were about economic development, but we had community development initiatives. I was focused on energy policy, health policy, anything that would make rural communities more sustainable and more livable. And at the same time, we were building the Nordic venues. Some of the Alpine venues up in Aroostook County started to fail. Big Rock was one of them. And we started thinking that that might be a part of the model as well. In addition to the Nordic venues, we would focus on developing failed alpine ski areas. So we bought Big Rock in 1999, bought Black Mountain in 2003, and I had a team of 12 people made up of incredible young men and women who could have been successful in anything they wanted to do in their lives. A lot of them came from Dartmouth and Bowdoin and Middlebury, Colby Bates, University of Maine. We had a lot of University of Maine engineers in the program, which was my background. And what I was most excited about was they wanted to focus their young lives on making a difference in rural communities. So they focused on developing youth development programs. We had Olympic development programs. We got 15 athletes onto Olympic teams in our first 15 years. And we got thousands of kids off the couch and into healthy, active outdoor lifestyle, cross-country skiing, mountain biking, hiking, canoeing, kayaking, all these kinds of outdoor sports. And I did that for 20 years, spent a lot of time. Most of my time was focused on running the various ski venues, and the other 12 staff members were all focused on programming. So I was running 7 different ski areas around the state, trying to take failed alpine skiers and turn them around and develop Nordic centers. And as I said, after doing that for 20 years, I retired from that in July of 2020, I guess it was. And I had been working for a couple of years to try and find a buyer for Saddleback. In 2014, 2 days after the Libra Foundation had called to say that they were tapping out on supporting Maine Winter Sports Center anymore, I had 8 weeks to raise $1 million to keep the wheels on the Maine Winter Sports Center bus. So I had my own little existential crisis going on. But the Berry family called me 2 days later to say that they were thinking about closing down Saddleback, and was I interested in buying the mountain? And I was. I had spent a lot of time thinking about Saddleback. Every time it came up for sale, because of the work that I was doing with the other failed ski areas, we were generally what people thought of as the next solution for the mountain. As I mentioned, I was doing all that on my own. I didn't have the bandwidth to add Saddleback to the mix by myself, but as the Berry family reached out to me, I started thinking this does start to make more sense. Libra had backed out, so I didn't have access to capital anymore. But my son and I went up and spent a couple days looking at the books to try and figure out if we could make a go of Saddleback, if there was a profitability play there. And we came to the conclusion that there was, but that it was going to take a lot of capital that I no longer had access to. And I spent 2 or 3 months negotiating with the Berry family and Coastal Enterprises to see if we could find a solution that would allow us to take over the mountain without having to take a lot of debt on, which I wasn't in a position to absorb. And we weren't able to do that, but I was locked in on Saddleback at that point. So Tom Faderly, who's become a dear friend, he's an attorney in Portland. He and I spent a couple of years trying to figure out who the right buyer would be, knowing that it would have to be a unique buyer. You know, you think about how long Saddleback has suffered. In its 60 years, it's been profitable 3 times. The Berry family had a very hard time being profitable. We're not able to get there in spite of all the money that they spend on that. And there was a lot of underinvestment in the last couple of years. So think about the deferred maintenance that had to be reinvested in, and think about the things that had to be invested in to fundamentally change the financial trajectory of the mountain. New lifts, new snowmaking capacity, a lot of rework on the lodge, new trails, all sorts of things. And the amount of risk associated with that investment would suggest that no traditional buyer would be interested in this, and that proved to be the case. And when Magella came on the scene, I don't know if you guys followed the story that much, but they were the Australian guys that showed up as the White Knights, and everybody was ecstatic about the fact that they were interested, and they were talking big about, you know, $150 million investment and a tram that went from the base of Saddleback all the way down into the IGA parking lot in Rangeley and all this crazy stuff. Everyone got real excited about it, but Tom and I had been involved with Magella before they went up there and some projects they had going on in Portland. We knew that they were talking big, but the architects they brought on board, the lawyers they brought on board, they never paid, and they left Portland and moved up to Rangeley to you know, take their act up the road, if you will. We knew that they weren't legit and continued to try and find a buyer, and that's when Arcturus came along as an impact fund. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and suggest that most people don't know what an impact fund is. So I'll dive down that rabbit hole for a minute. And banks are required to invest in communities from which they derive deposits. And the form of that investment in a lot of cases is in charitable contributions to enterprises that they think will make a difference in the community. Or they can give their funds to an impact fund whose job it is to invest those monies for them. There are also private investors that look for impact funds to invest in. And so Arcturus and an impact fund model is in general was the perfect model here. And Arcturus specifically was a perfect entity to take this on. And the reason is that while Arcturus and impact funds aren't specifically interested in ski areas, in fact, that would typically be antithetical to what they're interested in. What they are interested in is recovering lost leading employers in communities. And that's what Saddleback represented. So the Saddleback play for Arcturus is more of a means to an end, with Saddleback being the means, and the end is helping to solve a lot of the challenges that are being faced specifically in Franklin County, Western Maine. The loss of seasonal workers, the lack of access to affordable housing, to childcare, to health and wellness care, those kinds of things. And I worked with Arcturus, Tom and I did, for 2.5 years to come to a conclusion with the sale. It was incredibly difficult. In fact, the hardest deal that I've had to do in my 40 some odd year career. There was a lot of nonsense that went on. There was, we think about the politics today and misinformation. The amount of nonsense that was put out there about Arcturus and their motivations and their history and who Jonathan Tower was and all this kind of stuff would have made a man of lesser character walk away from the deal 100 times over before the deal got done. But Jonathan continued to lean in, continued to show an incredible amount of resilience, and gave Tom and me a growing confidence that he in fact was the right person to take this on, and he's proven to be that. We finally closed the deal January 31st of 2020.
Let
And
me interrupt you a minute here, Andy. I want to make sure I understand. There was a lot of resistance to them coming in and getting the ski area going.
yes,
Why?
believe it or not, there were a lot of people whose self-interest were not aligned with Arcturus taking the mountain over. They knew that with Arcturus coming in, that I would become the CEO and general manager. There were people that Magella had made a promise to that were going to be the general manager and CEO. And so those people were fighting against this. And the Berry family, as much as I love Bill and Irene, and I do, and respect them, the family kept holding out hope that Magella was in fact still the right answer to the Berry family and to the Saddleback community. This was as they were being indicted and on their way to jail for bank fraud. And I think a lot of that was that the Magella had made an offer to the Berry family of $12.5 million for the property, and had given a $500,000 deposit of earnest money towards that purchase. And the Berry family knew that, okay, what they understood was the value of the property as a result has been valued at $12.5 million. We came in with a different valuation based on reality, not based on a fraudulent attempt to use EB5 money that they were going to steal to consummate. Actually, they never intended to actually buy the mountain. They were going to raise a bunch of money from foreigners who were going to give $500,000 a piece in order to get green cards to the United States. And it's the same thing that happened with Jay Peak in Vermont. But, put yourself in Bill and Irene's shoes. Someone had just offered them $12.5 million for the deal and put $500,000 down. We come along and we're offering $6.5 million. And that was the rub, was that someone had established the value, but that value establishment was not based on reality. It wasn't based on appraisals. It wasn't based on the value of a failed business. What I know from ski areas is it doesn't matter how much money you've invested in the business. That doesn't define the value. If the business is not profitable, the value is only the fungible objects that you own, the lift, the groomers, any vehicles you have, the lodge, the land, those kinds of things. And as a business that had failed, the only value of the mountain was the land, the lifts, the lodge, those kinds of things. And Arcturus is not in the habit of overpaying for their assets, because the more we paid the Berry family, the less money we had to invest in the mountain. And we're $30 million into the investment in this mountain at this point, and we're just tapping the surface of what has to be done. So anyway, we finally got to the point where we had closed the deal. This deal died, and literally is a word that's used way too often, but I will use it in the most literal sense here. There were literally 30 times this deal died a painful death in the year and a half of negotiations, including the morning that we finally closed the deal. I was convinced that after all of this work, it was done. It wasn't going to happen. I called Betsy and I told her that, I think we're going to have to move on, and I'm back to my consulting gig and retirement. Tom and I had, a beer to console ourselves over the fact that as hard as we had tried, this just wasn't going to happen. By noon, the deal was back on again. By 2 o'clock, it had died again. And by 6 o'clock, we had a deal and there were fireworks going off on Rangeley Lake.
Oh, geez.
It was crazy. And I showed up the next morning and there were a whole bunch of hungover people on Haley Pond at the hockey tournament. But, it was a joyous start to everything. We started working on the lodge redesign, and a month later, COVID hit. And we had to back away from the reconstruction of the lodge. I asked the architects to take some time to think about what the reality of this new COVID was and think about how we could mitigate the effects of COVID in our lodge. Everyone else in the ski industry had shut down all investment at that point because every ski area in the country pretty much ceased operations a week after COVID presented itself. And as a result, no one was investing any money. We were the only ones that were investing in infrastructure and certainly in our lodge. So there was an opportunity for us to differentiate ourselves from the entire national marketplace, and we did. We focused on making sure that we had an HVAC system that would create essentially outdoor air quality inside on a regular basis. A year and a half later, we do air quality tests throughout the day. And what you expect for CO2 levels inside is 800 parts per million. What you expect outside is 400 parts per million. And our air quality ranges between 350 and 450 a day. So we feel very confident in saying that our lodge is the safest in America. We also invested a lot of money in the bathrooms to make sure that all the toilets were touchless flush, plumeless flush, that the soap was touchless, that was not going to be a contamination zone for infection. And when you think about it, it has helped mitigate the spread of COVID in our lodge. But when COVID's not an issue anymore, we still have to deal with cold and flu, right? So having a lodge where the air quality is essentially the same as outside air, we feel will make people more confident coming to our area.
Let me interrupt you there a second, Andy. This is the first I'm hearing it. And to me, that's a big deal. I would like to, you have to advertise that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are.
We do talk about that. And I'll get into marketing in a minute, but that is one of our key points of differentiation that we're proud of. So then let me kind of walk sequentially through where we were. So January 1st is a really late time to start working on the amount of work that had to be done to transform the ski area into one that could be profitable. And we invested $18 million in the first year, including $7.5 million new high-speed detachable quad. So if you guys had skied Saddleback before, you remember the old Rangeley was a double. It was an 11-minute, very cold ride to the top of the Rangeley lift. And when we had crowds, and if we're going to be successful, there have to be crowds, it'd take an hour to get through the line and get up the chairlift. And that is what stunted the growth of the mountain and was primarily responsible for its inability to be profitable. So first thing we did was invest in a high-speed detachable quad. And if you haven't ridden those before, the chair detaches from the rope. As it comes around, it picks you up. It's only going about 4 miles an hour, so it's very easy to get on. It reattaches to the cable and you move up the mountain at 22 miles an hour. And what was an 11-minute ride, or essentially an hour trip up the mountain, is now a 4-minute ride. And we went from 600 skiers an hour capacity uphill to 2,400. So we have 4 times the uphill capacity that we used to. And that was transformative for us. We also spent a lot of money in the lodge. I already talked about the HVAC system in our bathrooms, but we also significantly expanded the upstairs, the pub capacity from 126 to almost 400 seats. We tripled the size of the kitchen. Most important, you may remember there were no bathrooms on the third floor. So you had 1 or 2 beers up at the Swig and Smelt, and you had to go all the way downstairs to go to the bathroom in your ski boots. And it was typically a one-way trip. You just didn't come back up again. Now we have bathrooms up on the third floor, so that's not an issue anymore. And we moved some things around in the lodge to make it easier for our guests. We also put in a RFID system, so you can buy your tickets in advance. You pick them up in a box outside the lodge. You go down to the lift, you put it on, you put the ticket in your pocket. The gate opens up, you go through. If you don't have the ticket, the gate doesn't open up. So we have virtually eliminated theft of services, but it also makes it a lot faster for people to get from their car to the lift and just start skiing. And they've really appreciated that. We've expanded our parking lots. We built a 30-acre solar farm, which reflects our commitment to the environment, to being good stewards of a remarkable boreal forest. We're building a mid-mountain lodge at the top of the Rangeley that we're partnering with Maine Audubon on. And that's one of the projects I'm most proud of. You know, every ski area in the world is going to have to develop at some point, and Saddleback's no different. What will make Saddleback different is how we develop. And you may remember back in the 1980s to almost 2000, the Breen family owned Saddleback, and their intention was to build the backside of the mountain. So when you're driving from Farmington, you would have seen trails as you approach Saddleback from that direction. The Appalachian Trail shut that down for almost 20 years. And the Breen family spent millions of dollars fighting the National Park Service to try and make that happen. And essentially, after 20 years of a lack of really any investment in development of the mountain, Sunday River, Sugarloaf, Saddleback were all pretty much peers when that all started. Construction at Saddleback pretty much ended, and Sugarloaf and Sunday River continued their development. And you see what they look like now. We have to catch up, but how we catch up is going to be what will define us. And I wanted to make sure we weren't going to run into problems with the Appalachian Trail, with Maine Audubon, with Trust for Public Lands, those people that would typically have been fighting against what our development initiatives were. So the first day that we bought the mountain, being an LL Bean executive and having worked with all these people in the past, and I also worked very closely with them at Maine Winter Sports Center, I reached out to him and I walked him through the thought for this mid-mountain lodge. And I said, you know, just what I said to you, we're going to have to develop, but how we develop will be what defines us. And our plan is to build this lodge on pedestals, so we have a minimal disruption of the watershed. We're going to build it almost entirely glass. You know, when you think of the typical mid-mountain lodge, you bring an excavator up, you dig a big hole in the ground, you put a cement slab down and plop a warehouse on top of it. And that wasn't the experience we want. You know, you could just as easily be in a warehouse in Bayonne, New Jersey as on top of a mountain in Maine. I wanted this thing to be surrounded by glass so that when you're in this, you're immersed in a natural environment with all the views that it offers. So the whole thing, about 80% of the wall structure is glass. But we're building in a bird habitat that is a prized habitat for the Bicknell's thrush. And I wanted to demonstrate that you could build responsibly in an alpine environment. So we partnered with Maine Audubon to come up with a glass strategy that would eliminate bird strikes. And not only do that, but allow Maine Audubon and an initiative that they could take to other cities to say, this is what responsible development looks like. This is what glass strategy looks like at Saddleback, but you know, this is what it can look like in Portland or in Philadelphia and New York. If you've been at some of the glass buildings that are being built in Portland now, it's a killing zone for birds. You know, the number of dead birds at the bottom of the WEX building, for instance, is alarming. So we partnered with Maine Audubon. We have a great solution there. The roof is going to be an undulating sod roof with native low bush blueberries and native grasses. So when you're on the Appalachian Trail looking down, looks like a natural feature, doesn't look like a lodge. And when you're a bird, we've just created habitat for you. And that, our commitment to the solar farm, we're buying new environmentally friendly eco-diesel groomers that use significantly less carbon fossil fuels. You know, those are the kinds of things we're doing to demonstrate our commitment to the environment. And that is a key differentiation point for us as well. Most alpine ski areas don't care about that kind of stuff. And a third differentiation is the culture. So if you've been to Saddleback, you know that the Saddleback family is a real thing. When I bought Black Mountain in Rumford and Big Rock in Aroostook County, one of the first things I did was try to instill that same kind of culture in those mountains. I was aware of Saddleback's culture for a long time and admired it. So when I became a part of the leadership of Saddleback, the first thing I had to do was convince everybody that, yes, I'm a guy from Way, but I understand the culture. I understand how important it is to the Rangeley community. I understand how important it is to the Saddleback family. And we committed to demonstrating that we were going to keep that and grow that. So our host program was an important commitment to that. If you show up at our mountain, the first thing you run into is a horde of yellow jackets that swarm around your car like you're driving into a pit stop at a NASCAR race. And they ask if they can help take the skis off your car, help you with your boots and your bag, help explain to you where to go and how things work, all that kind of stuff. That is recognized by our guests. It's appreciated. And one of the things that differentiates us from the rest of the marketplace is we truly appreciate you being there. We appreciate you committing to Saddleback. We want you to understand that there's a family environment here, that you're now a part of the family because you're here. And so we all want to treat you with kindness, with respect. We want to be helpful. And no matter where you are in our building, whether it's the host, the ticket office, the lift operators, our various business units, me running around trying to be helpful, you know, we want people to know that this is authentic. This is not a marketing strategy. This is just who we are. We're down to earth. We're up for anything, and we're there for our friends. And that's the culture at Saddleback. And one of the things that we're thinking will also differentiate us from the marketplace. And the final thing is that as we build out our real estate, we're committed to building that out in a way that does so in harmony with the natural environment. And we think that that'll be a point of differentiation too. So last year, in our first year, we had a very aggressive goal of 70,000 skier visits. We exceeded that. We were ecstatic about that. We have an aggressive goal for this year of significant growth the next year, significant growth the next year after that. We're up to $30 million in investment at this point. And my guess is that we're probably another 40 million away from getting the job done. So that's the Saddleback story. I'll open it up to any questions you guys have or stories you want to tell, and let me know if I missed anything.
Okay. People, if you have a question, please chime in.
So Andy, this is Bill.
Yeah.
Before you talked about partnering with Audubon to make all that glass bird safe, can you share anything about what you're doing to make all that glass bird safe?
Yeah. So we looked at about 12 different strategies that Maine Audubon presented to us. And there are a lot more than that. And it's one of those things where, you know, you try to identify which strategy is going to work best for us. And what we understood was that the primary concern for us in terms of operation is the wintertime. And Bicknell's thrush are gone by the beginning of October. So it's not really an issue in the wintertime. So we don't need any protection in the winter. We can have unimpeded access to the glass and no visual compromise. The summertime really is the challenge. They show up around early May. Mating season is middle May until the end of July. And then they leave, relatively soon after that, or start leaving relatively soon after that. So what we're going to do is there are these very thin strands of wire. So imagine a screen that you put up in front of the window. These will be floor to ceiling screens because the windows are floor to ceiling that will have the thin band of wire in it that the birds will see and will choose not to fly into. Other strategies that we contemplated are you can get these triple pane glass that have LED light that shines up through the glass that is not perceptible to humans, but is perceptible to birds. That was an interesting strategy to us, but it was 7 times more expensive than the one that we chose. And that was the direction we went.
Okay.
So we put those things up in the spring, we take them down in the fall, and we don't have to deal with that in the wintertime.
Yeah. Okay. But so in the winter time, without the Vicknell's thrush, even though there are other birds there, Audubon doesn't think there's going to be a problem with window strikes.
Not at that altitude.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this is going to be at 3,700 feet of altitude, and the birds that we experience there will be at a lower altitude.
Yeah.
But we're committed to this in a real sense. So if we start finding that there is a problem with bird strikes, then we'll address that at that point. And Maine Audubon knows that we'll be engaged in the conversation throughout. We put up a bird monitoring station that will monitor the migration of birds from South America to the Arctic. And that will also allow us to track the movement of birds around that elevation in the wintertime.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that one of the options was triple pane glass with LED lights. Are you still using triple pane glass with all that glass?
We're
Just for
using
energy efficiency or-
double pane glass, not
Okay.
triple pane.
Okay.
Yep. And it's going to be primarily heated with electricity from our, solar farm.
Yeah.
And I think that solar farm will be the first of what might be a couple of solar farms. We're also putting in 12 EV chargers next summer. And while that's a significant jump from 0 EV chargers, and right now there's one in Rangeley, so we're increasing the EV charger capacity 12-fold in the Rangeley region. I'm also convinced that 5 years from now we're going to need 500 of those things, and we just have to figure out how to do that economically.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Thanks.
ask you something, Andy. I've always wondered what where does most of the money come in the ski area? Is it from the lift tickets, or is it a little bit of everything? Or
So the ultimate goal of the business model is for Saddleback to be profitable, but not any expectation that the profitability of Saddleback will drive the future development of real estate and those kinds of things. If we looked at the overall revenue stream from Saddleback and the 7 businesses that represents, including real estate, solar farm,
Restaurant.
we have a gravel pit, all these other kind of business enterprises that we have, about 5 to 10% of the net profitability will come from the ski area, and the rest of it will come primarily from real estate development.
that's interesting.
Yeah. And our model is going to be a year-round recreation destination. So in the summertime, it's we've got the Appalachian Trail going right over the summit. I did the Appalachian Trail in 1978, and I'm still very committed to the trail. Leon Gorman was, the former president and CEO of LL Bean, was passionate about Saddleback and the Rangeley region. He would volunteer every year at Piazza Rock lean-to and in that area. We have a commitment to the Appalachian Trail, to hiking, mountain biking, fly fishing, birding, plein air, all
Nice.
sorts of things. We want to turn Saddleback into a year-round outdoor recreation mecca. And believing that by doing so, not only does it fully fill out the promise of that region, but it also adds a lot to the value of the real estate. If you're buying a condo on Saddleback and you're
Yeah.
using it 3 months out of the year, it has X value.
Yes.
If it provides year-round recreation opportunities for you, then it's probably 3X the value.
I was, oh,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I was wondering if you're having any problem getting enough employees. I can see these yellow jackets descending on cars, and it sounds like you'll need a lot of employees.
So thank you for bringing that up, Marianne. What I completely forgot about was the whole community development piece to this. So let me just take a diversion for a second and say that, again, the reason that Arcturus bought Saddleback was to reestablish the region's largest employer. And we now are employing 200 people. That doesn't include the 40 volunteers that make up our host program. So we couldn't do this without a lot of volunteer support as well. But I have a task force focused on employee housing, and we have a $1.5 million gift that just came in from the Onion Foundation that is going to help us break ground on 140 bed employee housing that will be right on the mountain. 140 of those people would be working at the mountain, or 114, I'm sorry, would be working at the mountain in the wintertime. But in the spring, summer, and fall, probably 75% of those people will be working in the village. And if you've been to Rangeley in the summertime, you know that as many people are down there looking for a meal on a Monday or Tuesday, there's only one place offering meals.
Yeah.
That's Sargis.
Long lines.
Long lines, yes. And the reason is not that there aren't enough hungry people, there just aren't enough people to work. And when the mountain closed down in 2014 or 15, that was the biggest hit, was in the loss of the seasonal workers. If this is going to work in the region, we have to reestablish that employee base. And we know we need housing to do that. So that's our commitment to helping to solve the community challenge there. We also want to free up the young families that are having kids and have to exit the workforce because there's no access to childcare. Right now, there are 12 childcare slots available in the Rangeley region, available only 8 to 4 on Monday to Friday. A lot of the seasonal workers work evenings and weekends, so that's not a solution for them. And we have a task force focused on solving for that problem. And we hope to announce a solution in the next month or two that would dramatically increase capacity there. We're starting an employment agency in Rangeley that will help those 114 seasonal workers that are moving to the area, give them the confidence that they can find year-round employment. And we're also offering those seasonal workers year-round benefits, which no other community in the country can offer right now. So we think that'll make Rangeley a destination for young families around the country.
Sounds
And then
great.
we're also increasing access to health and wellness care. And we've got a task force that includes representation from Maine Blue Cross Blue Shield, Harvard Pilgrim, and a lot of the hospital associations around the state. And we're making great progress there too. So that's our commitment to helping the community. And it is all centered on trying to attract more seasonal workers to the area. That's what's been holding the businesses back in this region. And without the employee housing, we would be facing an existential crisis at Saddleback. We had 146 people on the mountain working last year, and it brought us to our knees by April.
They have a lovely new fitness center there.
the Rangeley Health and Wellness is
Very nice.
awesome. It's
Yeah.
an awesome resource. It's a rehabilitation center. Betsy goes down there to, have all sorts of stuff done, and it's a great resource to the town. Yeah.
Beautiful view.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me mention something, Andy. We have a lot of people in MOAC. They volunteer up at mainly Sunday River.
Yep.
And are you going to have opportunities for us at MOACers to volunteer at Saddleback?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We'd love to have you working up. At
How about advertising a little bit in our news? Just let us know so we can say, we can do this, this, and this. I know a lot
Shoot
of
me
them
an
do the
email. Yeah.
adaptive,
Yeah, shoot me an email with the contacts and I'll get that information to you. It's run by Jim Ferrara, who is he's a local guy in town who's retired. The people are awesome who do that. They're mostly in their 60s and 70s. We have some 80-year-old people working this as well. They just love all the interaction with the guests coming and going. And
I think we're a source for a lot of volunteers. I really do.
Hey, Dan, can I
Yep.
ask a question? This is Nancy Dorrance. One of the questions, well, I have a couple things. One is that years ago, we used to stay at the Roadhouse, which was on halfway between Stratton and Rangeley. And I want to know if if that place is back up and running as an option for overnights.
I saw that was, they had a big banner out. Is it Nancy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy, I saw that they had a big banner out when I drove through there last week. And it looks like a restaurant is about to open there. I don't know if it's available as a place to stay, though.
Well, we'll look into that.
Okay.
That would be one thing that we would want to know about a place for us to stay, especially if, like Dan suggested, people want to come up and help and volunteer. We have a handful of people in the club that are also adaptive ski
Yep.
volunteers, and I wasn't sure if Saddleback is welcoming the adaptive program.
Oh,
Maine
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We're working with Maine Adaptive, and Nancy, if when I send the information out to you guys, I'll include Janine McDonald, who's our HR director, and her job is to find housing for people, and she is essentially the clinger from MASH. I mean, no matter what we need, she goes out and finds it. Very resourceful. So.
And then the last thing is that last year, a small group of us came up and we were so excited to be back because the very first time I came to Saddleback was the first year I moved to Maine. And a group of my friends from New Hampshire and I stayed at the Widow's Walk. We spent one day at Sugarloaf. And then the next day we went to Saddleback, and it was the last day of the season. And we rode that we called it the Black Diamond T-Bar. and because there were 9 of us, fairly good skiers, our friend Linda Bradshaw was with me, and we were.
Linda's a dear friend of ours, Linda and Kay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we were on our way up, and Linda coming from the east, and I also were going to ride together, double on the T-bar. And they said, no, you can't. I said, well, we're completely capable. And they said, no, there's not enough snow to ride double because it was the last day of the season. Then after we rode it for 2 or 3 times, they sent ski patrol down to shovel more snow out onto the track so that we could keep skiing it, which was awesome. And one of our friends sat on the T-bar and broke it. And he went back and got that piece of wood, and it's on his mantle to this day. So we're really happy that you're back, and I'm going to do my best to get more of us up there to appreciate it the way I.
I think I know that guy.
Linda's
Wait a
definitely
minute.
planning to come up. So, make sure you connect with her too.
Didn't he start Weight Watchers? I think it was him.
No. No, anyway, but no, it's
So we opened the new cup septic lift was commissioned yesterday. And so the old cup septic was kind of like the T-bar was kind of like grabbing the bumper of a Buick as it sped by. This is a far more gentle experience. It's on a retractable cord, so you grab it and it gives you the time to put it where you need to put it before it moves you up the mountain. But yeah, come back and try our new cup septic.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Thanks so much. This has been great. Appreciate it.
I
Well,
think,
first of
Andy,
all-
we're all excited. Are there any more questions? Anybody want to jump in? But anyway, I think I speak for everybody to say we're quite excited to see Saddleback coming back. And I think we are very lucky to have you. And I want to thank you very much for the work you've done here. Really, there's a lot of people that you don't know that are very grateful for your work.
Well,
And
I give thank you. I get far too much credit for what's being done up there. There's an amazing team of people for whom this is more than a job. It's a passion project. It is certainly that for me too. This is my retirement. I never thought I'd be working 100-hour weeks in my retirement, but it's
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Well, all good. Okay. And I think I better close the meeting with that and say once again, thank you so much. And thank everybody for zooming in here. And I hope we're going to have a whole bunch of trips up there to Saddleback. All right. Thanks again. Good night
Send me
now.
your email address and I'll send a note out that you can distribute to all your members.
I'll do that. Okay. Thank you again. Good night now.
Thank you.